Hello everyone, it's Half-White Mike. I hope you're all well. I appreciate it's been quite a while since I last posted, but I have been having some issues with my PC, so I'm back to the old PC for this one. Today I'm going to be presenting a time-lapse of the Imperium Serrectum Campaign. This is the new updated map with over 900 regions. When I do the time-lapse, I'm going to be presenting this screen, which does cut off quite a lot of the factions in the legend. So I thought it might be useful before we start just to run through the various factions and their colours, so we know who the major players are in each area. In the east we have the two major successor states, the Seleucids and the Ptolemaic Kingdom, in grey and gold respectively. We have the Saka in dark red in the corner here. We then have Bactria in dark blue, another Hellenistic faction. Moving west, we have the Parni, who have a similar colour to the Seleucids, it just has a more purple shade to it. Moving into Anatolia, we've got quite a few different factions here. So we've got Bithynia in a kind of pale red, not to be confused with Rhodes, who have an even paler shade of red. We then have the Galatians in bright green, Pontus in blue, Cappadocia in a pale orange, Armenia in the dark red, and Atropatene in green. We've also got Pergamon in dark blue, which I missed. Moving further north, we've got the Saracens in orange, the Bosphorus Kingdom in a sort of brown purpley shade, the Getae in brown, Tylus in a sort of dark dull green, the Adricians in a turquoise blue, Macedon or the Antigonic Kingdom in purple, Epirus in a sort of dull green, the Aetolian League in yellow, the Boeotian League in a dark green, and then Sparta in sort of dark red. I think we also have the Aegean League in a kind of paler shade of purple compared to Macedon. So moving further west then, you've got the Scordisi in bright blue, the Ardii in sort of pale bright orange, Rome obviously, which have most of Italy in dark red, Syracuse in sort of purple shade, Carthage in white, Massilia in grey, and then another faction here in a kind of grey-green. Moving up then to the Iberian Peninsula, you've got the Editani in sort of yellow-orange, the Aravaci in bright blue, and then the Lusitanians in green. Heading towards modern-day France, you've got Massalia in a deep blue, the Boy in purple, who have regions north of Rome and also a bit further up. You've got the Insurbs in a kind of see-through turquoise colour, the Averni in red, the Adue in green, and then another faction there, the Allobroges in a sort of grey, quite pale grey shade. Moving up towards the last of the factions then, we have the Volcae in a dull green, Chatai in another shade of turquoise green here, Lugi in grey, the Suebi in a dark crimson colour, the Belgae in pink, the Cimbri in orange brown, and lastly the Trinovantes, a kind of Britannic faction, in bright blue. So that is all the factions and their respective colours. Hopefully when the time-lapse starts that will help. A couple of things I should mention as part of this video. There will be two time-lapses. The first will be every other turn, and that's the one I would recommend viewing, just because when you transition from summer to winter, the map sort of changes colour. So in winter, which is what I'm showing just now, it does have a more pale shade. When you move into summer, it has a more green kind of shade, so if the time lapse was to show every turn, it would basically be flashing in and out for every image, which doesn't really make for great viewing. So the time lapse I would recommend watching is the one I'll put in the next section, which is every other turn. It is 2 times to a year, so basically every image you're looking at is each successive year. But if you do want to see it turn by turn, then you can flick to the end, and I'll put bookmarks in for everything. The last thing I should mention as well is that I couldn't get past turn 681. It did seem to crash after that point. I'm not really sure why. I did try a few things but couldn't get it to work. So that's why the time lapse goes from turn 0 to 680. So without further ado, let's jump into this one. Alright, so that is the end of the time lapse. I hope you enjoyed it. As we can see, we're in turn 680 or 70 AD, which is about 300 years after the start of the campaign. I thought it might be worth going through some of the stats and also a high level look at the map just to sort of debrief what happened. So I'm going to go into the overhead view just so we get a better look. So in the east then, the Saka spent most of their time fighting with Bactria. Both of them conquered some more regions, but neither of them really did a huge amount outside of that. The Parni started with one region, and as you can see they've got quite a few now, but they're not a major player, I would say. The Seleucids lost almost all of their territory in Anatolia. They did conquer some regions in the south, but I would say they sort of crumbled as a faction, as they usually do in the main game. The Ptolemaic Kingdom didn't do a huge amount. They did conquer a fair bit of Anatolia at one point, but they kind of got pushed back, and their area just now looks a lot like their starting position. Moving into sort of Anatolia then, Rhodes did very well. They actually have sort of lion's share of the regions here. Pontus as well has a good territory. Cappadocia did pretty well. And then you've got the Atropanes in green. And then Armenia, which kind of crumbled. They've only got one region left, but in Anatolia there wasn't really any massive winners. Most factions have a similar area or number of regions, so I'd say it's fairly even there. Moving further north then, so the Bosphorian Kingdom didn't do too much. They got a few more regions, and then the two factions which started sort of further out, like the Saracens and the Lugi, did very well because they were just fighting against rebels, so they both have quite large territories. Moving east then, we've got the Getae, who did quite well in a very sort of crowded space. Tylus did as well, kind of performed reasonably well. Over the other side then, you've got the Adricians, who just have a few regions. The Bithynia faction have about 5 regions up on the north of Anatolia. There was a lot of fighting in Greece. Sparta actually did very well. They conquered a lot of these regions right at the start and then never really lost them. At one point they had all of this area, but they did get pushed back. There was a couple of other factions which sort of lost their place in Greece. So Athens, as a faction, lost Athens very quickly, so they're on this island here, but it's not really Athens anymore because they've lost their home city. There was the Ocean League, which was the faction in yellow. I think they must have been destroyed. But at one point they held most of this swathe of land, which they then lost to the Ocean League in dark green, who then later got pushed out by Macedon. So there was 2 Greek factions which kind of got destroyed, or they lost all their holdings in Greece. Macedon, or the Antigonid Kingdom, lost most of their territory in the north, but then they did kind of head south and pick up quite a few regions here. So they're probably quite similar to how they started, I would say. Moving further north then, you've got the Squadici, who are probably one of the major winners of the campaign. They're one of the top 5. They've expanded fairly rapidly, and they knocked out quite a few other factions as well. At this point in time, the RDA, who are in orange here, they're on their last leg, so that will be another faction the Squadici would probably knock out. And then also the Boy faction is on its last legs too, so that probably would give the Squadici more space to expand into. Moving west then, we've got Rome. Obviously they didn't do that much in this campaign. They lost their holdings in southern Italy, and they did conquer some provinces in the north, but they didn't really do a huge amount. They actually did knock out Epirus, just on the coast here. That's what their regions are here. Sparta, sorry. Yeah, moving to Africa, there wasn't really much movement here at all. Most of the factions have quite similar to what they started with. In the Iberian Peninsula, the Editani were the major winners. They're also one of the top 5 factions. They fairly handedly beat the Arabaci and the Lusitanians. And then heading into modern-day France, the Adoue were probably the major winner there. They had the lion's share of the provinces. The Averni did okay. They actually had quite a big territory for most of the campaign, then they lost it to the Adoue. Masselia didn't really do that much in the blue, and then the Allobroges are just a kind of smaller faction to the north there. The Belgae in pink kind of held onto the coast for most of the campaign, and then they decided to invade Britain quite late on. Cimbri, they've got quite a big region, quite a sprawling region. Volcae have a kind of reasonably sized territory, as did the Chatai and the Lugi. So that's the major movements. Actually, I've forgotten the Britannic faction, the Trinivants. They actually didn't have many regions for most of the campaign, then decided later on they were going to invade the rest of the UK. So they do have nearly the full main island there. But yeah, that's how it looks after 680 turns. So going back to the scorecard. We go to the top 5 factions. At overall ranking, it's the score DC in that sort of pale blue. I think they're at the top. Naturally, they have probably the biggest territory, I think. Well, the most regions, I should say. Rome is also there because they have a lot of regions as well. Editani, who were the big player in Iberian Peninsula, and then lastly the Antigonid Kingdom, which is Macedon. They seem to have a very high production ranking, so that's why they got into the top 5. But I think the major losers territory-wise were eventually the Seleucids. Yeah, that's the Seleucids who started up here and lost a lot of it. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed that time lapse. The next section is going to be the time lapse again, but every turn. It's not something I'd recommend doing just because it will be flashing in and out, but I did put it in for completeness. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.